Okay, so in this tutorial what we're going to look at is modeling a structural steel frame using beams, columns and beam systems. So following on from last week, we're going to just open up a new structural template. So when you open the screen here, we're going to click on New, go to drop down menu and go to the structural template and then just click OK and it should open up. So here again, just like we talked about last week, it's always just personal preference myself, but I always put the project browser on the left hand side and the properties tab on the right hand side. Again, if this isn't the case, you might have to drag it over. So just, if it is over here, just drag it by the menu, bring it over here and it should snap to the side of the screen. Okay, so we'll just get straight into it. So the first thing we're going to do is set up levels for the building. Again, this is done as per last week's tutorial. If you're not too sure, you can follow along this video, but there's also look at your notes from last week. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the east elevation in the project browser and then adjust the existing levels and create new ones. So the first thing we're going to do is going to rename level 1. So if you just bring your mouse in here and just double click on the text for level 1. Then highlight it and we're just going to call this one ground floor. And then just click out into space here. Would you like to rename the corresponding views? That's just letting us know that any changes we make on the screen here will just appear in the project browser. So yes, we do. And then we're going to do the same thing again to level 2. So double click on it, rename this one to first floor. And just click out of it. And again, yes, we'd like to rename the corresponding views. And we'd also just like to adjust, currently the distance between the levels is 3 meters, so it's 3,000 because we're all working in millimeters here. So we want to actually adjust this to 3.5 meters, so we're going to click on the line here and you can drag this up slowly and you can see that the distance actually changes as we move it up and down. So we want to bring it up to 3,500 or 3.5 meters. You could have also just typed 3,500 on the keyboard and it would have done the same thing. So we should have something looking like ground floor here, first floor, and a 3.5 meter difference between them. And we'll see then that the finished floor level now is reading 3.5 because we adjusted the levels. So next we're going to do is going to create 3 new levels using the copy function. So we're going to first select the ground floor. So let's click on the line somewhere here. And then we're going to go up to the, once we click on the line, select it, you'll see it'll highlight blue. Then we get the modify tab up here. So we're going to click on the copy icon. So this is this icon here. So it's the 1 circle to 2 circles. Again, if you hover over these icons, it'll give you a quick instruction and demonstration how to use them. So we'll just click this. And then we're going to click at the end of the grid line because we're going to just select our base point first of all. So we'll use our base point at the end. And then what we're going to do now is going to drag this grid line down, we're going to drag this line down about 0.5 meter, so 500 mil. So again, you can either move it by your hand up and down, or you can just type in 500 like this, and that'll copy it down. And just press escape a couple of times, and then we'll see we have a first floor, ground floor, and level 3. Obviously we want to rename this, so we can double click on it again. Oops. We can just double click on the text. Rename this to TOF Foundation, so this is top of foundation. Just click out into space, and if you zoom out you can see what that looks like. Again, you might have noticed a few seconds ago when the text disappeared. That's when you select on the grid line and you see this little tick box here. If I untick that, the text disappears. If I retick it, it reappears. So it just adds the information. This just helps if you want to clear up the drawing a little bit. If there's too much text on top of each other, you can turn things on and off. But anyway, we'll move on again. So we're going to do the same thing again with the copy function, but now we're going to actually create a second floor and then we're going to rename that the roof. We're going to actually create a second floor and then we're going to do the same thing again and create a roof level. So we'll work on this one here. We'll copy the first floor, and again these are all going to be in 3.5 meter intervals. So click on the copy icon, select your base point, bring it up. I'm going to type in 3,500 because it's just a little bit quicker than playing around with the mouse, and we'll see that's gone to level 4. Press escape a couple of times, click in here on the text, and we're going to change this to second floor, and then let's click out into space. So on the second floor, we're going to do the next one. We're going to copy the second floor up for our roof. So click on the line, click on the copy icon, I'm going to click on the endpoint. Make sure you go straight up, because it's obviously when we type in 3,500 and we're like this, it'll go 3,500 in this direction, which won't be exactly 3.5 meters vertical. So just make sure your mouse is going vertical. We can type in 3500, and then we have our new level 5 or level. We're going to rename this as roof level. Yours probably would have been level 5, but don't mind that. So now we should have top of foundation, ground floor, first floor, second floor, and roof level. So hopefully yours looks something like this. So one of the things you might notice though is if you look very carefully, you'll see that the original 2 levels that we set up, the icon for the finished floor level is in blue, but the other ones are all in black. So what this means is that the actual new level that we've created has not created a floor plan over in our project browser. So we have our first floor and ground floor, which were the original levels we had, but our second floor and our roof level and the other levels have not shown up here. Again, this is, you have to look carefully, but this is when your finished floor level is not blue. You see this one is black. So what we're going to have to do is actually change some settings. So we can add a new plan view by clicking on the View tab. So if you go along the top here, click on View, and then you'll see, here we go. So click on View, and then we're going to look for Plan Views, which is this icon here. Click a little drop-down menu, and then we're going to go to Floor Plan. And this little dialog box pops up. What we want to do is just select them all. So basically click on First Floor Plan, press Shift, and your down arrow, select everything. This just means we're going to highlight everything, click OK, and on all these levels we'll have floor plans created over here. So let's click OK. And you'll see we've got our little floor plans have shown up over here. So we can click on the project browser on the left hand side of the screen, click the little plus icon, and now we'll see all our floor plans have shown up just the way you wanted them. So the next thing we're going to do is actually put in our grids. Again, this is going to be similar to what we did last week in the tutorial, but we can follow along here, or you can look at those notes from last week. So what we're going to do is in the floor plan, we're going to go to the top of foundation plan. So for our floor plans on the left hand side in the project browser, double click on the top of foundation, make sure you click on the text, and you'll see here it opens up along the top screen here. We'll see our 4 section views. So this is the north elevation, east, south, and west elevation. So what we're going to do, this time we're going to use the copy function. So we're going to click on the structures tab up along the top screen here, and then click on grid, which shows up. Here we go. So if you go over to the right hand side of the screen, we're going to click on grid, and you'll see the command is active when you have this kind of green highlighted ribbon up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw one vertical grid, grid A, from the bottom to the top using the grid button. And you'll see number 1 will show up on the grid line, but we'll change it to A afterwards. So again, click anywhere down the bottom for the moment, it doesn't matter where, and drag it up somewhere here. Escape a couple of times. Then we'll see here's our grid line. Now we are going to change this to, A instead of 1. So again, if you zoom in, just double click on the text, change to A, hit enter. Make sure you hit enter. If you just click out of it, it won't change. So press A, hit enter, and then you're good to go. Press escape a couple of times just to change the command. Okay, so we've done that. So your grids then should now be drawn. So we're going to use this using the copy command. So what we want to do is draw 8 grids at 5 meter intervals. Again, last week we did use the array command. Because we're just using a different command this week, the copy command, we'll just use this one just for a bit of practice. So what I'm going to do is just click on the grid line. I'm going to click our copy icon. Again, it's probably good just to find a center point, or an actual good point to snap on. I'm going to just click on the end point of the line and just point it across. So they're going to be at 5 meter intervals. So I'm going to type in 5,000. And again, the icon is still there, or the command is still active. So what we can do is just point the command over here, press 5000, and you can keep just pressing 5000 without changing any commands until you have 8 of them. So, oh, that was a typo. So make sure you actually get all your zeros. I'll just delete that one. Continue again. So again, select your base point, point it in the direction you want it to be copied to. 5000, 5000, and that's HIJ, I think. Yeah, that's it now. So double check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 grid lines at 5 meter intervals. So now we're going to do our horizontal grid lines. Again, I should probably have shown you this at the start, but if you have your notes, you'll be able to see this. What we're going to do is actually just draw this here. So we have our grid lines along the top, 8 of them at 5 meter intervals, and we're going to draw now our horizontal ones. And see, these aren't exactly, you can't do this what we did last time because the horizontal ones are at different intervals. So the first one's going to be a 6 meter, then 8 meter, 6.5, and 6.5. So we'll just have to do them individually, like we were doing almost before. But so we click on the Structures tab along here, go to your grid. Again, it doesn't really matter where. We're just, for tidy's sake, we're just trying to keep it within the section lines. So try not to go over the section lines because then it'll just make things a bit difficult to see. So I'm just going to click. Doesn't matter right or left, you can go. So there's one. And again, now that's also, because we've done A, B, C, D, E, F on this, on the horizontal one, it's just trying to continue one, but we actually want to change the horizontal line, the horizontal grids to numbers. So it's going to be number 1. Again, press number 1, hit enter, and then escape out of it a few times. So again, looking at our drawing in the notes, the first one interval was going to be a 6 meter. So I'm going to click on the grid line, select our copy command, go to the end of the grid line. Again, the end point here highlighted by the purple or magenta looking colored box, and then point downwards. So the first one was going to be at 6 meters. So I'm going to type in 6,000. The next one was going to be at 8 meters. So I'm just going to bring my mouse all the way down the bottom so it's always pointing in the downward direction. If we point it up here, what will happen is the grid will actually go upwards, but we want to just make sure they're all going to be going down. So just leave it there, leave the mouse alone, don't touch anything. We can just use the keyboard from here. So type in 8,000 for the next one, then 6,500, 6.5 meters for the next one, and then 6.5 meters for the last one. Hit escape a couple of times. And again, you can see we have our A, B, C all the way up to I and along the top, and then 1 to 5 along the side, on the horizontal axis. So hopefully yours looks like that. Again, double check you make sure you had the right dimensions, because if you don't have the right dimension for the grid lines, we're going to be drawing on the grid lines, so the building might end up being a slightly odd shape or wrong dimension. So again, just make sure that you've got all those dimensions correct. And again, if yours are looking slightly different, say if one of your grid lines are too long and too short, what you can do is you can double click on one of them, and you can drag this up or down. If you want to tie it up, you can drag them up or down. And you'll see it actually, if you move one, they'll all actually tie themselves up. So unlike you might have done an AutoCAD, you have to change each one individually. And this Revit knows that if you move one, just for consistency, it's going to keep the same. And if you feel like putting the labels on the other side, again, if you click on the grid line, you can show the bubble here, and then it'll show up here. So you could do that for each individual one if you want. I'm not going to bother for the moment, but it's for this example, you don't need to do it. We have along the top, along the side here. If you've done them on this side, that's okay as well. Don't worry about it. So what we're going to do again, we were talking about the importance of making sure the grid lines are the correct dimension. So we can actually annotate this grid line just to see if everything is okay. So to add mentions between the vertical grid lines, we're going to click on the Annotate tab. So we're currently in the Structures tab, so we're going to go over here to the Annotate tab. You can see there's all different options which it shows up. So these are aligned, linear, angular, radian. Again, if you've used AutoCAD, this should be familiar to you. So we're going to click on the aligned. So we're going to leave the modify place dimension as they were. So this is these options here. So there's all different ways you can play around with these, but it's wall faces, center of core, faces of core. Again, this is depending on what you're going to be annotating or the measuring up. But for this sake, we'll just leave it at wall faces. And we're going to leave the pick the same as well. So it should be just pick individual reference. So this is what we're going to do. So now we're going to do just basically all we have to do now is, if the line is still active, we can zoom in. So we have our aligned. These are all the same. Let me just double check everything is great. Actually, sorry, my mistake. We're going to change this to wall center lines, because the grid line is always going to be the center of the line. So now what we're going to do, we just have to do is just click on the grids. So click one grid at a time. It doesn't actually matter where you're going to click them, because it knows what's going to be measuring, because this is the center line. It's the only thing there. So we have in the Annotate tab, we have the aligned option, wall center line. So I'm going to click on here, and then across to B, and then just keep going across to C, D, E. Zoom out a little bit so we can see everything. F, H, and I. And then once you've got the last one done, what we have to do in order to actually end this, we just click back inside on the inside of the grid, and that'll actually just lock them in place. So then we should have something, again, there should be 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000. Again, hit escape a couple of times. If you want to move them, you can click on the icons and grab these drop points and just get the move icon, and you can just bring them up a little bit. Again, we'll know where to move them when we start drawing our building. We'll know where to put them, but somewhere there it looks good. So we see 5,000, 5,000 all the way across. So now we're going to do the same for the horizontal. So again, in the Annotate tab, we're going to go to Aligned. Setting is wall, center line, individual preference. And again, all we have to do is click on the grid lines. Doesn't matter where, just click on them. So click on one, and the next one, and the next one. Zoom out a bit. And the next one, and next one. Again, once you've got your last one, all you have to do is click back inside on the grid line. Kind of position it where you want it, and that'll lock them into place. Again, if you zoom in, you can double check. So 6.5, 6.5, 8,000, 6,000. So all our grid lines are in the correct position, as we can see from the annotation. Again, it's always good to double check your things. If you're building a building and you've got the wrong dimensions on your plans, what it's supposed to be, that could have disastrous effects. So always good to double check if you're not too sure. Okay, so next what we're going to do is going to actually insert some columns into our drawing. So we have our grid lines. So the columns we're going to put in are going to be actually aligned onto our grid line. So we're going to place columns at each grid line from foundation level up to roof. So we're going to ensure that we're on the top of foundation plan here. And we have these two other options open here, so we're still actually active from the last command. So I'll just press escape a couple of times. Just make sure we don't do anything we shouldn't be doing. So, and again, I don't know if you remember this from last week, we've got a few extra open tabs now. We could obviously just close them down individually, but just for a bit of practice, if we go to the View tab, we'll click on the Close Inactive, and that'll just shut down the other two plans, which we don't need at the moment. Okay, so we'll go back and put in our column. So we are on the top of foundation plan. Again, if you're not, just double click on the top foundation plan here. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the Structures tab, because obviously it's a column, so it's a structural element, so it's always going to be in the Structures tab. If you're following this course, we're going to be always working with the Structures tab. We shouldn't be doing anything in the Architecture tab. So Structures it is. So we have our column, so we're going to click on Column, and you'll see that a few different options show up. So in the Modify Place structural column bar, we're going to change the depth. This is the Modify Place. We're going to change the depth to height and unconfined to first floor. So let's double check. So currently it was set, sorry, the unconnected option to first floor. So there we go. And the dimensions there, that's all we need to change. We can leave rotate after placement blank. We don't need that at the moment. And again, it's good practice to place your columns per story. So top of foundation to first floor to second floor to roof. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to add the columns at other levels. So then we're going to do it on this level here. Then we're going to open up the first floor plan and place the columns to the second floor. And finally open up the second floor plan and place them to the roof. So the columns can be placed at the intersection of each grid line. So I'll just go back on the screen here, sorry. Okay, so let's place our columns. So we still have the icon or the command active. basically just click into where, again, it doesn't snap onto it, but it knows what we want to do. So we just click into the intersection of the grid lines, and we can go across and do this at each intersection. So we'll just do the first line here as an example, and we'll show you a different way how to do it. Again, all I'm doing here is the command is still active. I'm just clicking on, bringing the mouse to the intersection of the grid lines. Again, Revit knows that we want to put in the intersection of the grid lines because that's just general best practice. And here we go. Now we can press escape a couple of times. And we can see they're all there. Now we want to actually place them on all the different ones as well. Sorry, on all the different horizontal grid lines. So we could actually just do the same thing again, just place them individually on each single one and go down to the floors and do the same on all the different floors we need to go up. Of course, that will take a long time, and time is of the essence, as they say. So there's a few different options you can do. You can actually select all of these and then copy them down. So copy them down here, use a base point to copy them down. So we'll just do that as an example. Again, if you remember from the first week's tutorial, there's two ways you can select objects on the screen. So if I go from the left-hand side, from the right-hand side, hold my left mouse button down and drag it across, you'll see everything that selection box touches is going to be selected, which we don't want to do. So just hit escape a couple of times. But if we go from the left to the right, it's basically, it's basically everything that's within the selection box. Any whole objects that are in the selection box will be selected. So you'll see they're selected when they go a little blue, might be hard to see. And we can click the copy icon, and then we can use the grid line here as a base point and just copy them down. See them there, and they all show up. Hit escape a couple of times, and you can see we've actually copied them down, which is nice quick way to do it. It's much quicker than doing it individually. But again, because time is of the essence, there is actually an even better way to do it. So instead of doing it that manual way, we're going to actually add our columns automatically using Revit's inbuilt command. So we'll go to the Structures tab, we'll click on Column. Again, by default, it brings up the UB column we've been using already. And you'll see along the top here in the green shaded part of the ribbon, there's an option here for at columns. So we're in the Modify Place Structural column, and there's an option for at grids, not at columns. So if you click on this option, Revit will automatically input those columns at grid intersections. So all we have to do then after this is select the intersection. So we click on the at grids button. Again, nothing's happened because we have to select them all. So just make sure you get all the grids. So I'm going to just start from in here and just drag it across. And then once they're all selected, you'll see then that the columns have been automatically inputted into each of the grid intersections. So that's a lot quicker than placing them one by one, and also a lot quicker than actually copying a line each time on each floor. So what I want you to do next is to pause this video and go and repeat this process for the first floor and then the second floor. So we should then have columns going all the way from top of foundation level up to the top of the second floor. So again, pause this video, and once you've got that done, we'll pick it up again. First one, we did the top of foundation to first floor columns, and then hopefully you were able to work out how to do the first floor to second floor columns and then the second floor to roof columns. Again, they're all going to look something like this, but a way to check to see if all your columns are in the correct place is actually have a look at a 3D view. So if we go up to the top of the screen here, along the very top, you'll see the little house. This is our 3D icon. So if we click on this, it'll bring up the 3D option. So we can see here, we've got our columns on different levels. So we did it on the top of foundation to first floor to second floor, and second floor to roof. Have a look, just make sure they're all there, make sure you didn't miss anything. Again, you might look a little bit different to you if you're depending where your grid lines are, but you should have at least 3 levels columns. Again, to rotate this, there's a few different ways. You can actually click on this cube here, and that'll pivot the drawing around. Again, depending on how powerful your laptop is, the image might change with it. You can also hold down the shift button on the keyboard and the mouse wheel, and that also rotates it. Now if you get it in the position where you don't like the look of it and you want to get it back to its default one, if you hover over the cube here and just click on the home icon, that'll bring us back to the default position. One thing I should have mentioned earlier is, again, we've just placed a load of columns, but we didn't actually specify what columns we needed. So usually when you're placing columns, they would have been specified and designed by an engineer. And we're going to go back later and actually change these. But just for the moment, if we click on one of the columns, you'll see here on the properties tab, all the properties of that column can show up. So we'll see it's a universal beam. These are your size and dimensions here. You can click in, there's a few different things here you can change. As it's going up to the roof level, there's no offset, blah, blah, blah. So, you can click on each one of these. Again, this is what makes Revit very good compared to AutoCAD. Whereas AutoCAD, you could have blocks with information, because in Revit, we're actually drawing with objects. We're inserting objects. So each object has its own reservoir of data connected to it. So you can click into it and see what it is. Again, this helps us maintain things a bit better in terms of keeping schedules and keeping costs down. So hopefully then, again, have a look at yours. Make sure you have 3 levels. If you don't, just go back and see how I did the top of foundation one to the first floor columns, and then just redo them again. If you make a mistake, just press Ctrl Z, you can go back. So again, if you haven't saved your file, make sure you do it now. So I'm going to click on the file up here, click Save As. I'm going to save as a project. And again, what we're going to do, this is going to be your first name, last name. So in my case, it's going to be Thompson David TUT2, so tutorial 2. And the project type is a Revit file, so .rvt. You don't need to press that, type that in. So last name, first name, TUT2. Hit save, and that'll be it saved. We don't want to kind of be working for an hour and then lose everything. So if we look along the top then, there we go. The new name change should appear on the top of the screen. That's how you know what file you're working on. In the next video, we're going to look at setting up beams on the same project. So click on that one. If you haven't got this one right, just go back, watch it again. Make sure you have all your columns in the correct position. So you've got 3 columns in each column in each level. Got your grid lines correct. And your final action should look like this. One more thing actually, just before you go to the next video. If you, again, our beams, you can see they're kind of not the most attractive looking beams. So we can actually just change them. Again, this might kind of slow down your computer depending how fast it is. So if you go down to the bottom of the screen here, we see it has a scale. There's a few different information here. So if you click on this visual style icon, we click on shaded, you'll see now it kind of gives the beams or the columns a kind of a steel look finish. So again, it kind of makes things a little bit clearer. Sometimes the wireframe on the back up against kind of grid lines can look a little bit messy and hard to visualize exactly. So you can play around with this. Depending how fast your computer is, you might be able to kind of go different ones, but kind of a nice middle of the road option is either the hidden line one, so it just kind of makes them solid without seeing the grids behind it, or the shaded. I'm going to leave mine at shaded just so we can kind of see, because we're going to change materials later on, so that's where we'll kind of see this effect coming into effect a little bit better. Okay, so this is the inserting the beam, or inserting the columns. Move on, and once you got all this correct, you can move on then to inserting the beams, and that's going to be the next video. Okay, thank you.